everybody. Once again, I'm the host for this little tiny part of the day and the afternoon segment of the day. And my name is Robert Wilson, and I'm the Vice President of Div Inc. First off, thank you so much for bearing with us. Small technical difficulties, but that comes with learning, right? And that comes with having a startup. I started one of my organization back in 2019, and we used to run into new things every single day and having to adapt to the situation around us. And some of those times are some of the best times that you can have in your organization. And one other thing that is incredible is just listening to all those stories, listening to some of the best people in the industry answering those questions. And it's good to hear from them, because not only does it give an entire, good representation of social impact and what it is that they're trying to achieve, but also what it does is it raises awareness to the things that we desperately need in diversity and in racial justice, so in racial equity. So really good segment. Appreciated everything about it. But now what we're going to do is we're going to transition a little bit. Remember that you can definitely go ahead and click on that icon up there in the left-hand side of your screen, and you're going to have the ability to speak to somebody for probably around the next 5 minutes. It's going to be random, and just make sure you click connect, and you're going to get the opportunity to speak to somebody. And it's just such an incredible opportunity to be here. We all should be extremely grateful. And it's funny because now that I'm here in Austin, Texas, and I get to be around everything that's going on here at Capital Factory. See, right now I live in Dallas, and I'm from actually up in the Northeast in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And it's incredible just to actually get around the different cultures and the different people and the different ethnicities, even based upon region in the United States. And it just felt good coming down here today and getting to interact with people. I think we forget sometimes just how wonderful of a blessing it is to actually just get to interact with people, and all here to do one thing, and that is help others. So we're going to take about a 10-minute break, and we're going to come back for our next session, and it's going to be what to raise funds for your impact startup. So we're going to go over that, and we're going to take a quick break. So thank you. back, everyone. So glad that you're here. You are now watching Austin Startup Week. We're having a fantastic time together. We're going to actually move on to the second segment of our three-segment basically course today. And once again, I'm Vice President of Div Inc. for marketing, and my name is Robert Wilson. And I am so happy that you guys are actually tuning in to this session right now, because it's extremely important to understand not only how raising funds is just essential to getting your business started, but also if we just take it back a little bit and start thinking about the part before that in the journey, when you are about to actually think that you are in a position to go and raise funds for your organization or your startup, that means that you would have probably spent a long time, hours, days, months, 24-hour shifts, developing the plan to show someone that you think that your business is ready for raising capital. And that's an extremely special place to be in. That doesn't just mean that you have a quick idea, but you've actually done a lot more research, and that this is something that you are potentially thinking you want to spend your time. Because at the end of the day, time is the most valuable thing that we can have. So I don't know two other individuals that would be better at explaining this to you and going over these things for this segment. Definitely please welcome our next two speakers, Bart Bond from UT of Austin, and then also Bob Bridge from Swan Impact Network. Thank you guys so much for joining, and talk to you soon.
Robert, thank you for that kind introduction. Div Inc. is a wonderful organization that our angel network is proud to provide as much support as we can. So Bart and I are going to introduce ourselves briefly on the next slide, but I'm just saying for both of us, Bart, my good friend Bart, that we're very pleased to be here today. And we hope that we can answer all your questions at the end of the presentation. So please, put those in the chat, or however you do that with this process. So, want to raise funds for your impact startup? Robert said nicely the problem there. Just by way of context, our angel network gets around 200 applicants per year, and we fund about 8, maybe 10. So, that may help you to be motivated to listen to some of the tips we give you here. So, Bart, why don't you introduce yourself?
Great. Thanks, Bob. And again, I'm excited to be here to talk about this. I've been in the startup community for the last 15 years, mostly anchored at University of Texas in its Austin Technology Incubator, which supports startups from both the university and the ecosystem. I currently run its summer Accelerator program as well. On the environmental impact side, I work with a nonprofit in Austin called Pecan Street, which creates data sets to unlock pathways to climate change solutions. And in particular, I'm focusing on soil carbon sequestration there. Also in the director of Tarmac, which is this time around a green workforce accelerator program partnered with Civilian Conservation Corps program, for which we also partner with Div Inc. on. So it's fantastic to see all of us working together. I'll pause there and hand it back to you, Bob.
Thank you, Bart. And I spent 30 years in tech startups here in Austin, mainly semiconductors, where the first product sample took $20 million in 2.5 years to produce, maybe 3 years. But wasn't going to try to do that again. So rather than found another startup or started another startup, I created this angel network. In 2016, we started operating with 7 angels. The first year we invested $600,000. This year, so far, with 85 angels, we've invested about $3.5 million in impact startups. A lot of companies in environmental space, a lot of people in healthcare space, some education, and other kind of impact spaces. So what I'm going to do is run through some slides saying how we evaluate companies for investment. So again, 200 companies, 10 get to the final funding stage a year. So, this hopefully will be helpful to you. So I may be preaching to the choir here, but, briefly the timeline is that, when the company is created, typically angels come in this, after a year or so, maybe 2 years in, to give the first real money. And our network is often the first institutional investor in a startup at the pre-seed level. And then, a few years later, as the company grows, venture capital comes in, and that's maybe in years 3 to 5 of the company life cycle. And in years 7 or 10, there's an exit. You get acquired or you do an IPO. I think most impact companies that we see are likely to be acquired through an M&A event. So here's how angels think about investing. Let's say we make 10 investments about the same size. We know that half of these companies are going to fail. We'd expect that. We do the best we can to select the best companies, but half of them will fail. And we hope that one of the 10 will make a big return so that we get a total return on our entire investment. So what does that tell you about how we think about companies? We're always trying to assess the risk of the company being successful. And we use our best judgment, we use our experience, but we're often wrong. It's a tough thing to do to create a successful startup. So as an impact investor, there's 2 things we care about. One is that we want you to get profitable. We're not doing this for charity, as investors. We would like to make a return. We'd like to have someone in our portfolio make a big exit and give us our money back. But just as important, with equal weight, we want to gain confidence that you can really deliver social or environmental impact. We'll talk some more about all of these as we go through there, but 2 bottom lines are what we care about. And Bart, anytime you want to jump in here, feel free. I should pause briefly, maybe between slides, to let you do that.
Go ahead, go for it.
So, okay, a business plan has many aspects, and companies will say, well, what's most important for us to tell the investors? And we'll say all 9 of these things. Tell us about all 9 of these, but the 3 at the top are the ones that you really need to get us excited about: the team, the product and technology, and the market opportunity. All 9 are important, but early stage, we want to be really excited about that top row. And then we want you to not have stupid answers on the other 6. We want you to have some confident answers. And we understand that you may not have all this fully thought out, but you have to understand the questions you need to answer in those other 6 and have some reasonable answers when we have discussions. So the team, we've made 27 investments and 3 have failed so far. Most of them are still, prior to that exit stage of 7 to 10 years. 2 of the 3 that failed had team issues. There was a very technical CEO founder who after we invested, became the CTO, and new CEO was brought in. But golly, that founder who became the CTO never gave up control. We call it founderitis. So, we look for CEOs that have emotional maturity. Hey, Steve Jobs was highly successful at Apple, right? But his mindset was, do it my way because I know what the world needs. We rarely invest in that kind of personality. We want someone who's open and coachable and humble and always learning. These startups are hard. The environment's always changing, so you need to be constantly learning from your customers, from your competitors, from the marketplace, from your team members. And then, having prior startup experience is great. My second and third startups, I didn't screw up the same thing again that I screwed up in the first one. I learned. And so that's really helpful. And then having domain knowledge. Sometimes we see someone straight out of school who may have experience with Instagram and Sixth Street, but doesn't know the market they're going into well. And that really makes it harder to be successful. Bart, if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I resonate with a lot of this. I founded 4 companies, or nonprofits, and 2 are for-profits. I screwed something different up every time. So that certainly has been my journey as well. Also, on the example you told, I think I recruited the new CEO in to take over that role and watched it implode from his perspective. So that was incredibly frustrating. I think the last thing I'll add is, particularly in the impact space, perhaps more the social impact space than environmental, it's the team and problem fit, the team and beneficiary fit that starts to matter quite a bit, perhaps more so than traditional technology spaces. Does the team, particularly at the very top, the founders, have lived experience or something unique connection to the problem they're trying to solve? That seems to be more important here than it does on most software-related companies, for example.
That's exactly right. If a CEO had a father who died from Parkinson's, he may be really motivated to advance Parkinson's treatments. And that kind of deep personal commitment is really important on the social impact side.
Yeah.
So social impact, the basic thing we look for, because it's hard to know about how the social impact is going to turn out, is impact and the DNA of the company clearly all about impact. We had a company come to us and he said, we have this great tool to allow you to efficiently hire the best employees. And if you want to, you can use that to hire diverse employees. So we're an impact company. We said, no, you're not. You're a hiring tool company. So, impact has to be what you're all about to get at least through our funding cycle. And so the market opportunity, one of the things that entrepreneurs can do, maybe incorrectly, they have a cool idea for a solution. They go into a customer and say, a potential customer, and say, here's what I'm working on. What do you think about this? And the customer says, oh, that's interesting. I'd like to hear more about that. I'll be glad to answer questions. And the CEO comes away after the meeting saying, I think I have a customer here. They really like this. A more efficient way, a better way of doing market validation is to go in and say, customer, tell me what problems you have in this general area I'm interested in. Tell me more about that. Tell me more about that. And figure out if the customer has a problem that they must figure out how to solve. If they solve it, they get promoted. If they don't solve it, they get fired. That's a really cool situation to be in. And it's a little trickier in the social impact side because you have both the payers and the beneficiaries, which may be different. And so if you're trying to get income, you need to have this kind of payer, saying, this is a must-solve problem for me. And then if you get a payer who says, I really need to solve this, then you say, what is your budget that you could use to pay me next year for this solution? Oh, I have $500. Oh, well, okay, that's not going to help me. Or I have $10,000 I could spend if you could really solve this tough problem. And so you have enough of those payers who are saying that it's a must-solve problem and a big enough amount of money available to pay for the solution. Now you have a market opportunity. All that said, it was kind of like a pre-revenue company, and early revenue is also a strong validator. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Bart.
That works well.
So product and technology, is the product ready? Is it differentiated? Does it meet customers' needs? Seems pretty obvious. If it's a hardware company, do you have a supply chain in place to manufacture this? We look at that too, and we really want products which are unique, provide unique benefits, really uniquely meet customer needs. Any thoughts there, Bart?
Yeah, just the customer needs. You said this before. Is it one of their top 3 problems? Are they absolutely hair on fire trying to figure this out? And making sure you match that level of urgency you need with your product is absolutely critical.
Yeah, if you go in and talk to a potential customer and it's supposed to be a 30-minute meeting and it goes for an hour and a half, that's a good indicator.
Yeah.
So competitive advantage. Okay, here's the scenario, right? We're investing in an early stage company. It's going to take 7 to 10 years for us to get our money back. So please tell us that, okay, let's back up a moment. You've gone in, you've discovered that the customers really have this tough problem. It's urgent, your top three. You have a unique solution. The customers are so excited about it. And so you roll out your SaaS product or whatever it is. Well, what happens if Google or Facebook sees what you're doing and says, oh, yeah, I got 30 engineers sitting in the corner over there. I'll have the same product in 60 days. So when we think about a time frame, it takes you 7 to 10 years to get to an exit. What's the sustainable advantage over 5 to 7 or 10 years that gets you to a successful acquisition? So, in the case of hardware or pharma, it can be intellectual property, but convince us that there's some way you can really be successful even when your competitors see what you're doing. And if it's a pure software company, a simple app, that may be hard to convince us of. Bart, anything you want to add?
Spot on. A lot of companies don't start with one, but there has to be a clear path to one. And it's a lot of times network effects, data assets that are behind the scenes, those kinds that make sense, but it's not there from the beginning.
If you're building a new social network, how do you get critical mass of users? The big data, if you collect a lot of data that's valuable, as Bart said, that's also interesting. Financial projections. Hey, the good news is that we know all your numbers you share with us are wrong. we think that probably your last year's tax return is probably fairly accurate, but we do, because you're early stage, you don't have revenue yet, maybe, everything is a projection, but we look for a financial model that you have some reasonable detail kind of building it bottoms up. And then we look at the revenue and say, okay, they're projecting $300,000 in 5 years annual revenue. Well, they should be bootstrapping. That's not fundable. Oh, we've had other companies saying in 3 years, we're going to have $1 billion in revenue. Well, we just walk away from that deal as fast as we can. So, to get to an acquisition in 5 years, 7 years, you may need 10, 20, 30 million in revenue. And a lot of companies are capable of doing those kind of revenue projections. So, we look for just the sanity in the number. And then we also say, sometimes we see companies who have this really cool product idea, we're going to develop it. And then we don't need to do any more development because the product's out there, it's going to sell itself. We have 90% gross product margin. Come on, folks. If you don't keep investing in your product, someone will overtake you in a year. If you aren't spending enough on marketing and sales, you won't have market share. So we look at those kind of parameters also. Bart, you've done a lot of these startups. Your thoughts?
Yeah, usually when someone comes to pitch me to get into one of my programs, the 5-year table, that's just trash. I really want to know the 3 or 4 assumptions that went into it. Most things are just extrapolating math in Excel. And so really tell me what the 3 or 4 assumptions are, those variables that drive everything, and show me the evidence that supports why you think you're right on those assumptions.
Right.
Yeah.
Deal terms, the deal terms say, okay, you want us to invest in your company. There's some sort of agreement reached, and there's various terms in that agreement. One of the most critical ones is how much you value the company before we invest. So if a company has a valuation of $2 million, which is an arbitrary number at this stage, and we invest $1 million, now the post-investment valuation is $3 million, 2 plus 1, and the investors will own 1/3 of the company. And so the question is, how do you value your company ahead of the investment? And here's some general parameters, at least that work for Texas. These are not Bay Area numbers. Bay Area numbers are probably twice this. But if you come to us and you're just starting to think about you just past ideation stage, you've done just a little bit of validation, you say, all right, we value our company at 20 million, you won't get your foot in the door. And there's other terms that matter also, but the first one we think about is this one. I think I jumped over a marketing and sales slide. I don't know how I did that. Must be hidden by accident. So let me back up to that topic at least. So it takes 5 to 7 years to get to an exit. tell us the sales organization that can get you to 10 or $20 million in revenue. What are the sales channels that are specific to your market segment? Who do you need to have as sales partners? Is this all SEO for your SaaS app? Is it you need to have these big distributors on your side? Sometimes the CEO say, hey, I know how to sell this. I have all my old work associates. I know how to approach. That's not scalable. That's not a scalable model. So you may say, I'm going to be in year one, I'll be hiring a VP of sales or a CSO, and they'll be working with these types of distributors that we've already identified. Those distributors control, 40% of the revenue in the marketplace. And if we can get in a good position, one of those, it'll help us drive revenue. And then to support those distributors, we're going to need to have some regional sales managers to work with them. Details like that make us comfortable to understand what it's going to take to grow revenue.
Yeah, the thing I look for is our specific metrics on conversion rates, length of sales cycles, the cost of that sales cycle. If you're doing a lot of marketing based as opposed to sales based, when people come to your website, what's the call to action success rate? How many people ask for a demo or something like that, and then click through and purchase? So just having that kind of data makes all the difference in understanding if it's potentially scalable or viable.
Selling, in terms of the impact space, selling into hospitals and in public schools are so hard.
Yeah.
In a hospital, it takes 15 signatures. You only have 14, you don't move forward. Public schools have a little window in like June and July where they set the budget for the next year. If you're not on that budget plan, you wait another year to be considered. So, it's all those kind of things. We want to make sure you understand all those kinds of factors. Did I just go through 2 slides? I don't know if I did that. Fundraising Ask. So you're asked for some money. You say you may ask for, $500,000. And you say, we're going to spend it on engineering and marketing. We say, well, that's interesting, but what are you going to accomplish from a business progress point of view? Because as investors, we're buying some higher valuation in the company, meaning that the next time you raise money, you can have a higher valuation. And so that may require you to say that with this investment dollars, we're going to bring on 3 major customers who will generate, our initial revenue, or we may have, 10,000 mobile app users. Tell us some kind of metric that you're going to accomplish with our dollars. And keep in mind, I've done this many times. It always takes twice as long and twice as much money to get those business results. I've been there. I've experienced that personally with my companies.
Yeah, I was trying to raise a pre-seed round for one of my companies, and I thought I really needed $300,000. And I was in New York City, who tends to write bigger checks, so I just doubled it to $750 because I couldn't imagine spending $750,000 on what it needs to do. Their feedback was, "You're not raising enough." And it blew my mind. And then I started asking why, and there's some good feedback. But it's twice as long, raise way more than you think you need.
Yeah, we were just talking to a company that was going to raise $100,000 to get to some very specific near-term milestones, which are important to the company. But we said, yeah, but you may run out of money then you shut down. You need to raise at least $500,000, have some cushion there, and have some wiggle room next time you raise money. If you try to raise money with zero money in the bank, it almost never works.
Yeah, that happens a lot. People raise just enough to get to the milestone. They don't raise enough in case the milestone slips. But really, even if you meet it, you need to have cash to support you while you raise more money.
Yep. So the other thing I would say is we would like for you to describe to us that there really is a potential exit for an M&A, merger and acquisition. So show us some examples from your close market segment or similar market segments where people are doing acquisitions. If you're doing some sort of telehealth company, show us that telehealth companies that have sort of your size and scale you hope to get to are being acquired. Saying Google will buy me, we hear that sometimes. Well, show that Google is making acquisitions of a company of your type. And what's really cool, some of the more sophisticated, experienced CEOs will say, yeah, we're already in discussions with some of those potential acquirers because we're trying to figure out if there's some sales strategies we can do together or licensing deals. Because it takes 2 or 3 years to build those relationships to get acquired. And so, getting started early is really helpful in terms of giving investors confidence that you know what you're doing, you can pull that off.
Perfect.
Oh, I keep going 2 slides at a time. Why is I doing that? So my final slide before we go to Bart's slide is that, hey, this is hard. It's hard to raise money. It feels like 1 step forward and 2 steps back. One day, I got an investor interested. This is really cool. I think we'll raise 200K from that investor. And 2 days later, you find out they're not interested. And so there's it's an emotional roller coaster. You need to enjoy the hunt. You need to enjoy the excitement. You need to be comfortable with being in a sort of a uncertain world. And it's interesting. And it's highly gratifying when you pull it off. So, but the CEO should view it as a full-time job, essentially for 6 to 12 months every time you raise money. If you're raising money every 12 months, it's a full-time job permanently. So raise enough money so you can go 24 months.
Yeah, I was raising money for one of my companies, and Aziz Galani over at Mercury. I was telling him, actually, I'm enjoying that. I'm learning a lot. This is great. He just looked back and laughed at me. He said, that means you're doing it wrong if you're enjoying it. This is not a fun process. Go back out there and keep doing it until you're miserable. So that was just fantastic feedback, and he was right.
Yeah, I was doing fundraising from big VCs for big expensive semiconductor startups in Silicon Valley, and I had 3 or 4 appointments in the day. After every appointment, I'd be updating the slides based on the hard questions I just asked before I got to the next appointment. Just trying to constantly improve the presentation. That's kind of what you need to do too. You'll need to talk to maybe 40 or 50 investors to raise your money as an impact startup, if not more.
Yep.
So with that, I'm going to turn the podium over to Bart, and I hope I don't jump through 2 slides at a time like I was doing earlier. So
appreciate it. And so for this, I just wanted to share a bunch of data about the climate tech space because it's exploding. It's kind of one of the super hot, sexy things right now. And so feel free to ask questions about it at the end. So a couple things. First of all, I'm really excited to see that the funding is now matching all the different sectors that are causing the problems. It used to be funding for solar or clean tech. That's only a portion of the climate change sources. So here you can kind of see all the different emissions from greenhouse, just one way to think about climate impact. And you're starting to see deals happen everywhere. Ag tech is probably the hottest sector the last 3 years, which is great because it's been underinvested in for a long time. So this is encouraging. Go to the next one. And LPs, more importantly, limited partners who back all the venture capital funds, they're starting to fund more and more funds themselves. And that's a really big sea change. After the 2008 collapse of clean tech on the solar side, clean tech side, it took a long time for LPs to come back. They're coming back in big ways. And so you're seeing a lot of first-time funds. Some of these funds up here are first time, some are second, which is encouraging. The most encouraging one up here is SGF Ventures. They're on fund number 5. They've been grinding away at this for a long time. Go ahead, Bob.
We have 10 minutes left, apparently.
Yep.
I have 1 question so far.
Okay. Where is it going? Obviously, the big dollars, you can see the massive growth rate and money going into climate tech in general. It's always weighted towards the later stage where you put $50, $100 million in per round, particularly in climate, because you actually have to deal with atoms. It's not electrons. And so those check sizes do get to be a lot bigger. But you can see it's $15 billion. Just kind of averaging through there, which is great to see. There's 17 billion is 2020. The problem with this data for me though is there's only 1,000 deals. The climate problem is massive on every potential front, and 1,000 deals isn't enough. We need 10,000. We need 20,000 deals getting funded. because we have to have that many different experiments in all the different places that are causing the impact. So this one talks, you can see some of the numbers where who's funding it. And again, later stage is the big green bar on top. You're seeing 600 deals a year kind of happening the last few years. 2020 will probably exceed that. It seems like it's an incredibly hot space. But again, it's a lot of classic ventures capital, private equity almost in the later stage. So this is, I'm not sure what to do about this one. First off, this is the different rounds of funding, seed through growth. You can see the check sizes are just going up. They're getting massive. This is happening everywhere in tech. Part of me is really encouraged by that. That way you have more money to scale and get bigger. But I like to see it scattered around to more potential startups, more experiments, more attempts at all these different problems that we have. This is going to put valuation pressure on the teams and everything. So that was just a series of data that overall is incredibly encouraging on the climate side. I think getting climate funding is perhaps easier than some social impact side when you're going to scale, because it is so much more numbers driven. It's not so much about human beneficiaries, which is kind of a sad comment, just frustrating comment. Just kind of a couple other things these have already been put in there. One I want to call out here on impact with the twist. You have to be able to identify in the climate space the target and metric you're using. The UN Sustainable Development Goals are a great thing. Project Drawdown has a bunch of solutions to climate change. You have to be able to show a direct relationship of dollars in to moving the needle on whatever that metric is. That's an absolute requirement if you're going to go after some of these big funds. On the carbon side, kind of the minimum amount you need to be able to credibly claim to impact is 0.5 gigaton for a lot of funds. Breakthrough Energy, Prime, Coalition are two of the ones that are most prominent in that number. Breakthrough Energy is Bill Gates' fund. So big money's going in if you can prove you can have that scale of impact. So I'll pause there. I know we have a question. There may be more that comes in. The last thing, obligatory plug, Swan, Tarmac, Div Inc., Blue Sky Partners, Bloom Communications, Austin Technology Incubator, all these organizations that are around different aspects of social impact, environmental impact, startups in Austin, hosting the happy hour for the Austin Startup Week tonight at Andy's Day and Night. Please come out, meet us, meet all your peers who are doing incredible work impacting our community, impacting our climate. We'd love to meet more of you and help you with your journey.
There was one question about ESG, which is environmental, social, and governance. As an impact network, we don't care about ESG measures. That's really a public company marketing statement. Maybe it's real, maybe it's marketing, I don't know. But ESG might imply that you're doing a good job of not polluting or recycling or treating your employees well. Well, if you're 3 employees trying to survive 3 months, I don't care what you do with your paper, or you're recycling or not. So we ignore ESG for these early stage companies.
And then, Bob, the other version of that is, a lot of big companies they're trying to be more responsible corporate citizens. And so when I think of companies, like for me, it's a bright line. Are you addressing a climate issue or not? And that's a very broadly defined statement as far as the companies I want to work with. And the same is true for the Swan Impact Network.
Yeah.
Internally, do they live their own values? Do they live those values? Yeah, I look for that. That's just my bias. Normally, if someone has enough lived experience or has a connection to the problem or the thing they're trying to go after, you see that resonate through their other aspects of their lives and through the culture they create in that organization.
80% of public companies now have an ESG marketing statement. Some of those are backed up by reality, some may not be. Yeah. And there's mutual funds that just do ESG investing in public companies. So I don't worry about ESG. A question: at what point would values be valued? Those values, at what stage? I guess that's an ESG question. We never look at ESG. We're pre-seed and seed level investor. I think we're out of time. So I don't know if we're we're going to
Yeah,
turn
should we
it back over to Robert, I guess.
Very good.
Whoa. Well, first off, amazing job, fellas. Amazing job. Thank you so much for coming out. I see that the people are chatting in there, telling you thank you. We can't thank you enough. And it's good to just hear a lot of, sense and a lot of facts just about what are some of the best tools that you can use to actually raise money for your organization. And I can tell everybody who's on the webinar right now, or the streamcast, you got to get used to the things you're saying, is that being a business owner myself, that is an extremely difficult conversation, and it may seem very boring, and it may seem that you don't want to spend as much time there as you should, but that should be one of the, if not the most important, one of the most 3 to 5 important things that you have in your entire organization. So thank you guys so much for being on and talking about that.
Fantastic. Thanks, Rob. Thank you, everyone, for putting this on.
All right, no problem. Thanks for coming. All right, everybody. So we did that. That was absolutely phenomenal. First segment, you got to hear a little bit about social impact, and you got to hear from other entrepreneurs. And then, we followed up with a little bit of funding and finance, and we're going to move on here in a second. But first things first, if you want to connect with somebody, make sure that you're clicking up there in the top left-hand corner of your screen. You're going to get connected with somebody random, get to spend around 5 minutes with them. And if you want to connect a little bit more, you're going to have the opportunity to do that. Once again, you are watching Austin Startup Week. I am the Vice President of Marketing for Div Inc., and my name is Robert Wilson. So before we go into this next segment and we get our 10-minute break, it's important to understand that with one of the things that you were doing with becoming an entrepreneur is you are changing a mindset, or you are on a mission to accomplish things that may have never been accomplished before, and being able to put your mind in the right place and being around the type of people that are going to put your mind in the right place, be encouraging, be welcoming, be friendly, be morally correct. A lot of these things speak to integrity, and that's one of the most things that you have to have in your organization, especially if you're going to start up a company. The integrity and the mission and the legacy and what you're actually trying to do has to be visible to every single person in the organization, not only being able to read it, but also being able to actually feel it. So we're going to take that 10-minute break, and then we're going to get into a little bit different. We're going to talk about economic mobility and environmental sustainability, and getting all the paddles to swing the right direction from the city, from the government, from also even your own tools in your backyard. So thank you very much, and we'll talk to you soon. everyone. Welcome back to Austin Startup Week, and we are having a blast. Thank goodness we only have 8 more hours to go. No, I'm joking. We have one more segment, and then we're going to head out to happy hour. Remember, again, that's at Ani's right after the event, and you're going to get the chance to mix and socialize and network, because that's what we want to do as people. We want to network, we want to bond, and we want to create friendships and also be on the same page. And it's funny, before I introduce our next guest, talking a little bit about being on the same page. I have a 7-year-old daughter, and my wife and I, she's always having different friends over. And one day she had a friend over, and I remember this like it was yesterday. She was about 7, 8 years old, and she was already familiar about playing with her iPad and her iPhone, and they had all the accessories just like my daughter. And, believe it or not, I said, hey, could you just do me a favor and call your dad? And, she took my phone and she called her dad, and it rang and he didn't pick up, and the voicemail came on, and I just looked at her and I said, okay, yeah, leave him a message. And she looked back at me, and then my wife looked at her and she said, leave her a message. Leave him a message. And she looked at my wife and I said, Jasmine, leave your dad a message. And she handed me back the phone. And what's amazing is that she doesn't know what a voicemail message is. She doesn't know what that even means when the answering machine picks up. And it's incredible that she knows all of these other things and things that I don't even know how to do on the iPad, but she doesn't even know how or what a voicemail is. And that is why it is so important to be on the same page and have all of the proverbial paddles swinging in the right direction. So it's, when I say that, I like to bring in our next guest, because whenever you have the city or the local state officials or the local government and someone that's going to come up with a great plan and then also the funds to back it, you are going to create an energy and a group that really truly needs no introduction. I want to make sure that I introduce everybody right, and also make sure that you guys know this is going to be a panel, and you definitely want to make sure your chairs are upright and locked in position, because they are going to take this thing to the next level. Please welcome our moderator all the way from Blue Sky Partners, Mr. Matt Glazer. Also, welcome back all the way from Tarmac, and that is Mr. Bart Bond. You guys saw him a little bit earlier. And also, we have another guest from Inco today, and her name is Miss Hai Yu. Hello, Hai. How are you doing today? Oh, I'm sorry. Hey, you, I apologize. Or Hi, you. You'll be able to tell them, because we were joking a little bit backstage, and I'd never want to get your name wrong, but I appreciate you definitely being on here today. And then also Mr. Daniel Collada from the city of Austin. Once again, you guys are in great hands. Take this to the next level, guys.
Thanks, Robert. No pressure, everybody. That's a way to come into a panel that I haven't had that enthusiasm in a long time. It's super exciting to be here today with all of y'all and everybody who's watching. Before we get going, I just want to say thank you, everybody, for taking some time out of your day, and welcome to this third panel in Austin Startup Week's Social Impact Track. We are calling it Economic Mobility and Environmental Sustainability, an Austin-centric approach. My name is Matt Glazer, and I'm the co-founder and the chief strategy officer at Blue Sky Partners. Blue Sky Partners is just a boutique operations consulting firm, and we really believe fundamentally that we want to help support startups and mid-market companies and folks like you all in the nonprofit sector to do good work for a long time, and it's really just that basic. Before we get to this really great panel, I want to talk a little bit about the folks that are part of this Green Workforce Accelerator, which we call GWA sometimes. And they can't be here today, but they're still doing incredible work. GWA is an intensive 10-week program that's supported by the 3M Foundation and the City of Austin, and Daniel's representing that voice today. They're exploring how to strengthen the connection between environmental sustainability and economic mobility and workforce, all into one just sort of gloriously powerful soup to increase their social impact in the community. 5 Austin-based nonprofits were selected for this cohort, and their mission represents a spectrum of intersections between these impact areas. And again, speaking for them because they can't be here, Austin Youth Works is one of those folks, and they're a long-standing workforce training provider looking to expand and strengthen their green jobs programs and connections with hiring employers. Similarly, the African American Youth Harvest Foundation provides support to underserved individuals of all ages and is expanding their portfolio to provide exposure and training aligned with these green jobs that are coming to the Central Texas region. One that we were just talking with today, Fruitful Commons, is out there supporting neighborhood leaders and organizations to grow food, strengthen communities, and foster stewardship of the natural commons. And they're looking to expand their work and train individuals in regenerative community agriculture, doing really cool stuff. And then the Montopolis Community Development Corporation represents Montopolis, a community that has been historically known as Poverty Island, and that is now a proud multi-ethnic neighborhood with a rich history that predates Austin's. Their goal is to build the highest standard of efficient, sustainable homes in the community by training the community members themselves in green building trains and practices. And then finally, the Other Ones Foundation, which I also happen to serve on the board of, provides the unhoused individuals in our community with paid work opportunities and stable living conditions. TOOF's goal is to refine their offerings, provide their clients with springboard training that allows them to advance into upwardly mobile jobs and the environmental space in the community at large. 5 really great organizations, and I encourage all of you to check them out because they're doing a great thing for our community and working collaboratively, all of which are nonprofits too, and we are taking them through with a level of rigor to learn everything about marketing and lean canvases and sustainability and bringing these business practices to these social impact organizations. I'm also joined not just with these folks that are not here physically, but these great voices also here in front of you. Joining me today are the 3 panelists from the organizations that are driving forces behind the Tarmac TX and Green Workforce Accelerator. Before we get started with today's discussion, I'd like to have each of these panelists introduce themselves, their organizations, and tell us how they got involved with GWA. And so Bart, you're in my upper right corner and you've got a solid beard. So we're gonna go ahead and start with you.
Thanks for letting that be the tiebreaker. Everyone, it's good to talk to you again. If you're here for the last panel, it was around fundraising for startups. I've been doing that in Austin for about 15 years, running incubators, accelerator programs. Founded some of them myself. Startups have come through that. Have gone on to raise probably somewhere around $1.5 billion over that time period. So it's interesting to figure out how to take that background and impact the green workforce environment. How do we build a sustainable workforce? I came to this because I took over the Tarmac program last year, which was very focused on circular economy technologies and startups. And so as we expanded the focus, which we'll hear more about in a minute, it was a great opportunity to broaden the team that's putting on the Green Workforce Accelerator in Tarmac. So for me, serial entrepreneur, nonprofit and for-profit side, as focused as much as I can be on climate solutions.
Thanks, Bart. Hey, you.
Hello, it's great to be here. And I don't know if people missed the intro, but yes, my name is Hey You. It's easier pronounced than spelled, but it's great to be here today. So I lead INCO's programs in Asia Pacific and serve as special advisor to our US programs. So just a little bit about INCO. We're a global organization. We have 501c3 status here in the US, and we are committed to building a more inclusive and sustainable economy. So what does that mean? We have presence in over 50 cities globally, and we really run incubation and acceleration programs to support emerging companies who are building environmental and socially impactful solutions. We also run workforce development programs to empower individuals from diverse backgrounds to really gain new skills and acquire good jobs in future-proof industries. So as Bart was mentioning, INCO US launched our flagship program, Tarmac TX, in 2016. And through the support from the 3M Foundation, the program has supported Austin-based entrepreneurs to launch their solutions to pressing social and environmental challenges. And thanks to the evolving, innovative vision of our fantastic partners, and especially to the city of Austin, this year's rendition is focused on this Green Workforce Accelerator. And we really believe it is a pioneer in the country to synergistically enable economic mobility, environmental sustainability, And we at INCO are really thrilled to be leading together here with my fellow panelists to have this new type of accelerator to really inform the ecological, economic transformation of cities across the country and also across the world. Because at INCO, we really believe that local solutions can have a global impact. And we're excited to bridge across our communities and really amplify the impact and learnings from this Green Workforce Accelerator.
Thank you so much. And Daniel, why don't you round us up and just share a little about your role and the city's role in making this possible?
Sure. Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here with us today. My name is Daniel Collada. I'm the Acting Chief Innovation Officer for the City of Austin. And before this, I worked in the environmental field, then more in the sustainability realm for several years, and then more in the broader innovation realm, mostly social innovation for several years. And then last year was asked to take on a special project to get the Austin Civilian Conservation Corps program going at the city. This was created by a council resolution as part of the COVID pandemic recovery. And it was intended to help people who had lost their jobs or had a significant impact on their work, kind of get back to earning income and switch careers if they wanted to a more green or sustainability focused career that helped pursue kind of our collective city goals in those realms. So we acted quickly. We partnered with a lot of our existing partners or people that we knew. We got, I think, 11 new programs going, over 100 positions for people across the board in different types of green jobs and even public art. And then, one of the opportunities we've seen for growth of this program, which we actually have got a lot more funding to continue it past the pandemic now, is there were only so many partners that we were able to work with. So each one of our programs was in partnership with an existing organization. So we weren't holding any of them within the city. This let us move faster, but there were only so many organizations to work with, and they only represented so many areas to do work in. Whereas we want the Conservation Corps to cover a broad range of green economy and green and sustainability type jobs. So we decided to have an accelerator type program alongside our ongoing work in the Conservation Corps that could help build those capacities, both for organizations that want to have work programs where they could, pay people, employ people, develop that capacity, and help existing organizations expand into new areas, new work areas that they may be interested in, but just needed an opportunity and a boost to go through. So that was really our impetus for partnering with all of these awesome people on this idea for the accelerator. And I'm so happy that they're all here because they have made it bigger and better than I ever thought we could do in our first year. And it's awesome to work with them.
Thanks, Daniel. I'm going to stay with you here for a second.
Sure.
I've heard you say in the past that your goal is to make government in the city of Austin be the funder of first resort, not the funder of last resort. You talked a little about COVID and the timing of this and how there was this new capital infusion. I'd love to dig back a little bit more into that. And Austin is one of the first cities to really pilot something like this. And it's a huge collaboration as we're talking through this to understand the environmental needs of the city and workforce and the innovative community that we have been developing for years. Simple question, probably complicated answer, but why is this the moment and the right time to do this?
Yeah, no, it is a great question. Trying to catalyze action in this space or catalyzing action in this space is something that we've done at the Innovation Office for a bit. In 2019, we had another grant program that looked at providing more equitable access to green jobs. And we've done other types of accelerators around displacement, workforce development, and housing. So we're fairly familiar with this model, and we understand that we have, pretty broad and complex goals for the city government that we can't do alone. It really takes businesses and community organizations and everyone else working alongside us and together to achieve these broader community goals. So we always try and foster that type of environment and that type of collaboration. When you look at the timing of this, of course, we have the pandemic. We've had the pandemic where you had a huge amount of people leave the workforce either because they had to, or because they felt unsafe, or because they wanted a change. We did have large capital infusions from the recovery acts. So some of our initial money came from that, and most of our money that we have now to extend and grow the program has come from that. So we had we kind of had the stressor, we had the ability. We obviously have extreme climate issues that we are contending with now, and will continue to contend with in Austin, in the U.S., across the world. Austin has always known this. We have significant plans and goals, again, that we can't do by ourselves as a city government. We're a big organization, but no organization is that big. We've all got to work together. So every chance we get to try and help catalyze that space and bring it together, we do. There is, we always hold in our mind that access to the types of jobs that do affect the climate most are some of the least accessible, especially in our communities of color. Our communities of color are the most affected by climate change impacts and outcomes, and they're the most concerned with them as well. So providing access to those types of jobs and careers is kind of the least we can do, and what we absolutely have to do as a community and as a city to all kind of meet this need together. And so these kind of big broad factors all came together for us to spur this program, and the real inflection point was that we wanted to continue it, we wanted to grow it. We more than tripled our budget for it. And again, I know we need more action and more collaboration in this space. So this is one way that we can kick that off. And I hope this is the first of several rounds of this program, and we can continue working with you all.
Yeah, that theme, Daniel, that you're talking about collaboration and sort of this idea of like we're all stronger when we're all stronger. Hey, I'm going to come to you here in a second. But before I do, I want to acknowledge we have a question that has come in, and we're going to get to that after I ask you this sort of global question, since it's such a great one that's local. And Bart, you're kind of on deck to talk about some of the local impact and sustainability. But hey, before we get to that, I want to just, I've heard you in INCO talk consistently about building local solutions to global challenges, this concept of building the pie, social collaboration. And I would just love to know for you, what does this mean in practice, and how can a program like GWA inform other cities across the country or even the world, so that way we can solve some of these big complex issues?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. So as Daniel said, we know that we have to work together. Collaboration really is key. So it's what I really love about working with all of you in this Accelerator program, because at INCO, at the core of our mission, we really work globally with the belief that local organizations are the best suited to understand the challenges unique to their cities, to their beneficiaries. And so for us, working with local governments, with cities, with nonprofit groups, for us, it is the goal to really understand their challenges, to then facilitate, develop, and most importantly, amplify solutions from the ground up. So yeah, the priority is to really ensure these local voices are front and center, that the actions that we enable and support are uniquely tailored to the needs of the community. And so, for our Accelerator programs, we just try to help organizations ask the right questions. We give them the tools and the space to problem solve, to learn from one another. We really believe in the power of co-learning. And then as an objective observer, we really help them to see the connections where they may not otherwise see them. And then we help make those connections both at the local and the global level to enhance and advance the solutions. So we really see, in that context, in that framework of how we operate at INCO, for this particular accelerator, we really think it's the first step to informing the rest of the country, and then also on the global scale, just the other programs that we operate around different countries in how to tackle these issues. Because unfortunately, these programs that Daniel was referring to, they're not only faced in Austin. There are challenges that are faced in the rest of the country, with growing inequality, with environmental injustice, segregation and marginalization of BIPOC communities. And so we think that this really needs to be addressed intentionally, with the local expertise on the ground, and to not do it in isolation of each other. So this is what we, feel very strongly about doing at both the local, domestic, and international levels. And we're really excited to have this program in Austin to be the forefront of this particular work, and to carry that forward with everybody.
Excellent, thank you. Bart, as promised, you're on deck, and this is a question from the audience. What if a metro region offered a sustainable and very low cost delivery of goods systems, which would enable people to operate businesses right out of their homes? The secondary kind of the question is, goods to create things flow into, and the finished project flows out of their homes, right? So homes is a nexus point. What are your thoughts here, and what do you have to sort of add to that?
Yeah, it's actually interesting. I've seen a lot of startups actually try parts of first mile, last mile logistics here in Austin, particularly as we think about the circular economy. How do we don't just do, take some out of the ground, eventually put it in a hole in a different place in the ground? How do we start recycling or reusing, upcycling, redirecting a lot of those items? And so there are local startups who critical part of their business model is getting things from other people and taking it to a place that that it can do something else can be done with it. Those businesses are really hard. The underlying problem is the density of the homes. In this case, the homes that would be end up making whatever it is. The route in order to support that delivery system is incredibly challenging and costly. So that's one particularly relevant topic for all the types of green workforce jobs. And there could be a lot of first last mile jobs that are created by those types of startups that collectively need that type of workforce. So I encourage someone to think about how to create that workforce and apply to Tarmac the next time we do this, because that is a needed thing for lots of different types of green jobs and green organizations that can impact our climate in a positive way.
Thank you, Bart. Yeah. We've got more questions coming in, so please, you all keep them coming. I'd love to not ask any more of my questions. Yours are way better. So the next question, and Daniel, I'm going to throw this to you a little bit, but others, if you want to chime in too. The question we have is, how do we bring the resources that we see in Austin to places that are outside of the metro area, such as Taylor, where we're starting to see a lot of just stuff like bubbling up in the sort of new capacity of business creation? It's where this person is located, and we're about 45 minutes north of Austin is what they say. What advice do you all have, and Daniel, again, I'll start with you, to make sure that these emerging communities where we're seeing high growth on a commercial and residential level have the resources they need? And I'll add, because of the nature of GWA, how do we get to a spot where they not only have the resources, but they're getting ahead of the curve when we talk about workforce, sustainability, environment, and the social impacts that we're starting to see because of the rapid growth of the Austin metro area?
Yeah, and so from my local government perspective, we do try and collaborate as much as we can with area partners. So with neighboring cities like Taylor, with the county. One of the big things we are seeing now is there's a lot of federal attention right on this type of work as well, with the potential infrastructure bills and others, the climate corps that we've been hearing about. So I think us continuing to make those connections, and we always share what we're doing. You engaging with your local government. The cool thing about local government is we are very, very open to talking. Like, we're right here. You can probably find all our email addresses and phone numbers on the internet with like 2 seconds of search, and we tend to get back to people. So I would say really engage with your local government, and see what's going on, and see how you might be able to partner. I think there's always room for good ideas. There's always openness for collaboration. I won't say it will necessarily always happen, but it's always there. So I would just say, reach out on your end, and I'll keep working on my end to make sure that everybody knows what we're doing and how they can replicate it or do it better than we did, and keep it going.
And I'll add, a lot of the companies that are trying to figure out how to reduce waste, reuse things, they're setting up their headquarters or facilities in cities outside of Austin, like Taylor. Mm-hmm. And that means those cities, sorry, Daniel, but those cities are probably getting more equity appreciation because of that business. That's probably where the founders, senior executives probably lives. They're getting that benefit, economic benefit, more so than perhaps the day-to-day field workers for those organizations in Austin. So that's actually, the land is cheaper. A lot of times power is cheaper. That's a driver. As we know, there's, power is a negotiable thing now in Texas. And so if you can get that kind of reliability, that's another approach for
it. And Bart, I'm going to stay with you. Daniel mentioned a little bit about collaboration, talked a little about, and you're following up a little bit about the resource and sort of the benefits of the utility of just kind of moving outside of the direct city more into the metro area. I would love for you to also, just staying with that theme a little bit, talk through, there's probably some folks on this call who have an idea or have an innovation and are not really making a connection directly to sustainability or environmental impact or workforce development and green new jobs. And that can be really kind of messy sometimes. And we saw that even in the application process. So how are you helping the cohort think about the connection between workforce development and environmental impact? And then for the organizations that are planning to pilot like green collar, green jobs, or green program, but may lack the environmental background initially, how would you advise them to get started?
Yeah, the good news here is, environmental startups, climate technology startups, or even organizations that are bigger, 10 years, 15 years ago, that was basically meant solar and wind power. Today, that's not true. That's actually the extreme minority of efforts in the climate tech, sustainability space. It's about food. It's about mobility. It's about our housing, the built environment. All those types of topics, they contribute in different ways to our air, our water, our natural environment, carbon in the atmosphere. And so the first thing is the aperture for this is wide open. It is pretty much the entire society and our entire economy almost. And so the way that, I think about the types of green jobs, that means almost every job in the future needs to be some type of green job, because that's the scale of challenge we have. And so that's the first thing, is just, helping organizations realize that if they're operating in agriculture or mobility, that actually has a strong connection to climate, and that could be a green job. So all the folks have been doing workforce development in those other sectors, if we can help them tweak or slightly expand how they run their programs, it naturally fits into a green collar job type program, a green workforce development program. And so it's really a huge opportunity to just take and redirect a lot of existing infrastructure and organizations and capabilities to have a big impact on our environment and sustainability.
Thanks, Bart. Hey, I'm coming to you next. On deck, one of my favorite kind of questions, because we get to tell stories. One of the questions from the audience is, do you have any stories of startups that are successfully building these types of local-based global solutions? And what are they doing which is enabling them to do so?
Yeah, great question. So at Inco, one of the key countries where we're working the most with startups in this area is in France. We both invest and accelerate them. And so, of course, part of any acceleration process is to really provide the frameworks, to provide models. But most importantly, I think the elements that are enabling them to really provide local-based global solutions is to learn how to ask the right questions, and to ask those questions to those who are directly impacted by the work, to make sure that it is inclusive, to formulate them so that it's hitting those key areas. So that's something that we really have encouraged our accelerator cohorts to do. And also, just with the theme that we've been discussing in this panel, to know that they can't do it alone, and that they really need to tap into this cross-sector work. So whether it's engaging with employee volunteers from our program funders, just like, for example, with the GWA, what we're doing with 3M to incorporate more mentors, just to know that there are diverse ways to leverage your local solutions through the different partners that you can work with. So that's just a snapshot of what we've done in France and what we're looking to do more of with the GWA, and happy to share more resources as well.
Before we go to a very pointed question for you, Daniel, I just wanted to invite Bart. Daniel, do you have any other stories or any other connections you would like to share about successes?
I can jump in. One of the startups, the nonprofits that I helped found, is called 3 Day Startup. And it started here at the University of Texas, a bunch of students just getting together on a weekend trying to learn about entrepreneurship. Turns out, now 13, 14 years later, it has run those same kind of programs in like 40 countries around the world and impacted thousands and thousands of college students, young professionals. And then the thing that enabled it was, of course, a broader interest in entrepreneurship over time. But as all these communities that just were thirsty to help how to support their next generation. And it was a very inclusive local government, regional government driven pool into those communities. And so as Heyu has talked about, it's that local solution and finding a model that works in a community in one place and porting it over to another community and adjusting it along the way. So it's a fantastic partnership we had for many years with individuals and organizations, just like Daniel's doing with this one.
Thanks, Bart. Daniel, this one's directed specifically at you. The city of Austin had plans for regional drop center material hubs. So whatever happened to that?
I'm not sure. So I would be happy to look more into that. That would probably be a question more for our resource recovery department, potentially in collaboration with our sustainability office. But that's a great question because I remember those discussions. There's a decent chance that they're just still plodding along with developing that concept. There's a decent chance that it got some derailment with COVID, and it may come back yet. I know we've had renewed talks about resilience hubs, and that was in the context of both COVID and the winter storm, and those are going to have a lot of different types of concepts integrated into them. So maybe there, but that's something I could certainly follow up on with those folks.
Thank you, Daniel. Always a fountain of knowledge and support. Very kind. I've got one last scripted question or pre-drafted question, however you want to say it, and then we'll go to whatever other questions come in. And this is actually for all of you. So we'll start with Hey You, then we'll go to Bart, and since Daniel's been so popular, we'll end with Daniel again. So the big thing is, it's the elephant in the room with all this kind of work, right? It's like, what role can startups and investors, right? Both of them, because it's an ecosystem that we're talking through. What role can they all play in this work? And more specifically, where do you think they fit into the ecosystem from resources and expertise to job creation and hiring?
Yeah, for sure. I think in the digital and green space, there really are a lot of small and medium enterprises, startups who can be at the forefront to be intentional as employers when it comes to hiring, being inclusive in their strategies. And we know that Austin has an abundance of these companies, and you're really in the position to grow your business and impact on multiple levels, to really amplify your multiple bottom lines to be a sustainable, socially responsible business. And so by accepting new workers and be part of this change to scale with intentionality, to scale as a safe space for diverse individuals to learn, grow, and be empowered for a better future, I think that is one of the key actions that startups and new businesses can invest in. When it comes to investors, there's a great need for capital that, of course, goes unsaid, but not just financial capital, but social capital as well, to really support the impact of these programs to enable inclusive job creation and hiring. And we believe the return on this investment really can be having a thriving city, to have upward mobility of the people who live and work around you, and to be able to enable a more resilient community. To enjoy this, you really have to be part of building that community, to provide for this green renaissance that we are hoping to really make sure happens. And as I was mentioning, with the mentorship with 3M, be mentors and be part of the larger network and support system to help the people going through these programs. So just to reiterate, there really is a role for everyone in our ecosystem to make this impact a reality, and we definitely invite you to join us. I know there'll be calls to action to round out our discussion. So yes, that's what I wanted to respond to.
Thank you so much, Bart.
Yeah, to add on, you hit startups and investors a little bit differently. Startups are they're not small businesses. Startups are designed to eventually be massive, really large businesses. And so they do things differently. One of the things that they always struggle with is how to get people and hire on their team. And because when you're scaling and trying to add dozens of people a week or a month, that is really challenging. And so they could be fantastic partners for organizations just like this. And they're partners for this Accelerator program and for the organizations participating with the Civilian Conservation Corps, to have a trusted source of talent that's coming through those programs. And the great thing about that is, one of the problems with the startup sector are the diversity issues. And all these organizations we're working with are really trying to provide trained, incredible workers and team members that would directly address that challenge in the startup sector. The other part about investors, the first is there's a ton of money coming online for climate. I think it's about 15 or 17 billion dollars is going out per year now. It's huge. It needs to add a zero to that to really address the scale of problem that we have. And so there is money coming. It tends to be later stage companies, which is also where lots of hiring happens. So that's encouraging as well. And the last one's a little bit of a meta thought process of, if you're thinking about how to design what's a startup to eventually become a massive organization, some of the tools and techniques and approaches to doing that are actually very relevant to nonprofits who maybe aren't thinking about how do I scale up beyond my community or my region, but it helps them get to that threshold in a perhaps faster way or perhaps even more efficient way. And so I think there's a way that they can contribute to the broader collaboration process.
Thanks, Bart.
Yeah,
Daniel?
I think that's all spot on. And what I'll say from our local government perspective, and I've already said it a few times, is we really consider a lot of our big strategic goals and challenges as far more complex than the CD organization could ever deal with on our own. The Austin is all of Austin. It's not the city organization. It's all of Austin to us. And as Bart mentioned earlier, we really see sustainability, innovation, resilience, equity as lenses on everything we do. So we see every function that we undertake, every job that we have could be a green job under that lens, and every job in Austin can be and should be and will have to be in the future to meet these challenges. So in that we know that it's bigger than us. The biggest thing we can do is work with you and learn from you. I mean, that's one of the biggest goal for me from this accelerator. It's not necessarily hitting a set of performance metrics or anything for any of these organizations. It's just to learn what they learn as they go through, help us make our programs better, help us keep pace with what's going on in the city, new solutions, be collaborators in our programs. Let us work alongside you and with you on these challenges, because they are all our challenges. I will say there's plenty of types of work and sectors where government is the investor of first resort and maybe the only one. And we do a lot of business in those areas. So if something maybe doesn't look profitable, for lack of a better word, when you're thinking about it from the more market approach, do know that we do a lot of work. Local, state, federal government does a lot of work in a lot of areas. And as Bart mentioned, there's a lot of new work coming online in climate. So a lot of new types of businesses and growing types of businesses will be needed and will be engaged with on the government level in the coming years. And finally, here in Austin, we're really trying to build pathways with the Conservation Corps program. We don't want someone to just come, do the job, get income for weeks, months, whatever, and then be done. We want there to be a next step that they can take in their career, in that trajectory, in their training. And a lot of times, a business like yours or an organization like yours may be that next step. And maybe we've done the training, got the experience, et cetera, through some Conservation Corps program, and their next job is with you. Or maybe someone coming out of your organization, your business, your program, their next step is a Conservation Corps program. So we want to have your collaboration on both sides of these to really build those pathways and build that bigger green economy in Austin.
Daniel, you set up our call to action perfectly. So very glad that we ended with you on the scripted questions. If any other questions do come in, we have been given a little bit of grace to bleed over a little bit. So please feel free to throw in last questions. And as folks think about that, my challenge to everybody that is still here and listening and part of this conversation, one, show up tonight. Annie's Day and Night, East Riverside is where we're going to be doing the Social Impact Happy Hour. My teammates, Nathan Ryan and Shannon Dunst, are going to be there. So if you've got that connection to 3DS, you can not only just hang out with Bart, you can also hang out with Shayna. The other thing I want to just call out is that, just luck of the draw, our cohort this year is all nonprofits, and some of them have really great programs, and some of them have really great workforce, and maybe one or two has a little bit of both, but they're ideating out and really accelerating. They've never, in some cases, seen a lean canvas, or in some cases done an empathy map, and in some cases are figuring out where their fit is in the market, whether that is on the green job side or the program side, or creating sustainability through pocket parks, or ending the poverty deserts, right? So my challenge to you all is, if you're interested in being a mentor, a partner, a place for these workforces to go to provide jobs, or a place for jobs, just generally to take that next iterative step, reach out to us and let us know. I'd be happy to connect you with any one of these 5 teams. And then finally, as you're really thinking about your next steps, if what we talked about was really interesting or exciting, we're going to do this as long as the city and 3M and INCO will have us. And I have a lot of faith that we will continue to be here year after year after year. So I would love to talk to you today or tomorrow or the next day about your path to be joining as a member of the Tarmac TX cohort with whatever iteration or year that is, whether you're currently an idea that needs a place to foster that idea, or you have existed for years and years and years and you need to accelerate and have some time and attention and love to do that. But we're here for you. And so I'll sum it all up in a nice, clean way. We'll see you at happy hour tonight and Annie's Day and Night. We look forward to your application as a cohort member. And if you have everything figured out because you've been doing startups for years, we look forward to you being a mentor to these really great nonprofits and social impact organizations. And in either case, as Daniel very aptly put together, you can find any one of us online in any number of places, anywhere, and we look forward to that contact. So with that said, it looks like we have no more questions. So from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you, hey, you, Bart, Daniel. It's been great to have this conversation with you. And I'm going to kick it right back over to the Cap Factory team and Robert.
Wow. So you guys heard from some of the best people in the industry. This was an incredible day. And one of the things that I want everyone to take in is that understanding that all the information is given. Now you've learned a lot of all the different things that we've been hitting to you today, right? And giving you. And it's important that we take this, we think about it, and then we take action. Immediate necessary action, whether it's reaching out to somebody or maybe looking at doing a partner deal with somebody, or just definitely reaching out to somebody and just start networking. We are going to once again be at the happy hour at Ani's at 5 o'clock today. And thank you so much for all the support. Thank you to Capital Factory. It is an incredible job for Austin Startup Week. And thank you. Have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful day.